I need 2 volunteers who think racism and inequality are big problems in the world, in the United States today. Let's just stick with the United States. And then I need 2 people who don't think that. You're going to make this argument. And they're going to coach you. You got to make this argument. And however you're going to do it, and the idea is racism and discrimination directed toward black and brown people is not really that big of a problem today in the United States. And you have to coach them. Like they have no idea what to say. Am I right? You would have no idea how to make the argument, but you're going to make the argument. And so the 2 of you at least have some idea because you've thought about it. And so give it a shot, and then they'll coach you a little bit.
Like I would really say that like a lot of the I don't believe this, but I'm just going to say it.
No, hang on. Be in the role.
If I did believe that.
No, don't say that.
Okay, I do believe
that. I am
in
the role. I am here. Start your sentence with, yeah, listen, racism, discrimination, it's not really that big of a problem in the U.S. because ...
Yeah, it's really not that big of a problem in the U.S. because a lot of the examples that people use to justify it, it's very like one-off and very extreme examples. Specifically with like police fines for everything. Like there's a lot of interactions that black people have with cops that aren't projected by the news, but then like the 1 or 2 bad ones is what's like re-said a million times.
I guess similar to that, it's not a huge issue. I think it's made a bigger issue through media and social media. The fact that we all have basically computers in our back pockets and can start recording anything at a given time and post it on the internet or edit things to make them look like something they're not. So a lot of what you see is like fake news, I guess.
I believe that racism is not an issue because we elected a black president and we have black senators and governors. And a lot of the time, the difference between rich black people and poor black people isn't like race, it's just education. So a lack of education in black communities is a bigger problem than any other discrimination.
All right, go ahead, Matt.
It's a lot of the discrimination that we see is like institutionalized oppression, and even if it is real. Or
Wait, did you say it's institutionalized
oppression?
Dude, was that your word? Hold on. No, that's all right. You got no. Look, if you think that, you got to throw those words out there to confuse people. Yeah, it's institutionalized oppression. So all the liberals are like, oh yeah, that guy gets it. He's got it. He's talking oppression. All right, go ahead.
And I lost my train of thought. And even if you are a victim of institutionalized oppression, playing the victim card or like dwelling on it doesn't allow you to progress further. So we're holding ourselves back in that aspect, and it's more of a self problem than a.
So it's really an issue of people who have given up at some level their individual
and just think that the world is
motivation.
against them.
Mm-hmm. Okay, right. To overcome the odds that are against.
Another one that I believe is that it's definitely not a big issue in the U.S. compared to other countries, because in almost every country you can find some sort of persecuted group, and specifically in the U.S., the persecuted group, if you're talking about black people, has a lot of like power against like if you say someone's being racist towards you, like you can like have a way to like hit them back. But in a lot of other countries, like if you made that same complaint, like no one would care because like you're the persecuted group. So in that way, again, it's not that big of an issue in the U.S. because at least there's a way to like attack the racists if they exist.
People who are in minoritized communities, right? They actually, ironically, have been empowered a great degree in the United States by being able to identify and isolate and say something about the things that happen to them, and then it can be a real problem, like end up on the front page of CNN. That, you know, Sam Richards and well, maybe not CNN, but the Collegian, that Sam Richards discriminated against someone in class because whatever, he's a racist. Like, oh my God, that's like a headline on it. Maybe the Collegian, but nobody else would care. All right, yeah, go ahead.
A lot of the problems that we see are less about race and more about your economic class or like your financial standing. And it's a lot about your mindset to get to a certain place rather than what you look like. So like the races are spread out amongst every class. So you just have to strive to put yourself in a better financial standpoint.
All right, so in other words, one of the problems that we see in the U.S. When we start talking about racism, discrimination, all of the things that go along with that, as often as not, what we're talking about is class. Things, the problems that people experience, what they face are actually class-based, not race-based. So things happen to people, you know, they have some encounter with the police, let's say, or like this woman that we used the last class, who I gave the example of, who had to give birth in a jail cell. It wasn't that she was Latina and Hispanic. The issue was that she was poor. Had she been rich and Hispanic, or rich and Native American, or rich and black, or whatever, she probably would not have given birth in a jail cell. That's what you're saying. All right, that's a good point. Fair point. All right, bro.
The last one we talked about was like with employers and everything, like in the sense that if you have a black candidate and a white candidate and they're both like educated, no criminal history, like no other, like they can converse well, like there's no other issues, that like they will almost certainly take the black candidate because like they're incentivized to have more like diversity. And like in the same way with like colleges, like if you have like a white person and a black person with like exactly the same qualifications, like in many ways like there's incentives to pick the black person, which in a way like offsets any like possible institutionalized racism. So
in other words, hey, by the way, let me just say that these aren't Sean's ideas. You're feeding him ideas that you know, right? And bro, same with you. What's your name again? Isaac. Same with Isaac. These aren't his ideas. I had to pick two people who I knew would be able to feed ideas. Okay, so one of the issues is that we have these inequalities in the world, right? And we have discrimination, but we also have programs and things that are set up, other systems that are set up, so that when people experience something, right, or that other programs that uplift enough people, right, and give enough people opportunities that in fact what happens is it offsets the negative experiences of discrimination and so on. Yeah, that's all right. That's cool, man. All right, go ahead.
Racism is something that people unify behind, and people unify behind, and it's not always about race. Sometimes people use racism just to push against people who have different ideas than them.
Dude, awesome. Yep, exactly. So sometimes what comes out, in other words, all right, so sometimes when people start talking about race and racism and discrimination, it seems like they're talking about race, but in fact what they're really talking about is power. And so you're talking about issues that it just sort of, it ends up, or for example, if black or brown people start talking about inequality, we immediately assume they're talking about race. But oftentimes what they're doing is talking about inequality, which is not about race, but inequality which might be about gender, or it might be about class, or it might be about culture, or it might be about any number of other things, religion, but we immediately just start thinking that it's about race and racism. So in other words, to follow up on that, so what you're saying, in other words, is that a lot of times we keep seeing headlines about racism and discrimination and so on, but that's not what the issue is, really. It just comes out that way. So how about just kick one out about what the Nigerian, the kinds of things the Nigerian community says about the black American community?
Like one of like the like craziest statistics is like one of like especially immigrants, like immigrants from Nigeria, are one of like the most highly educated people in like America, like with like graduate programs and like bachelor programs. Like they actually hold the most like advanced degrees. And that kind of goes against the point of, like, if there was racism, because, like, we're the same color, but, like, we don't often experience the same challenges. So obviously race can't be the only thing if we look the same.
Okay, so in other words, okay, so here, let me kick it out. Let me just expand on that a little bit. That's good. So in the United States, the most highly educated group of immigrants, so immigrants come to the U.S. from all over the world, right? Lots of different places. All continents, every year. In spite of what Donald Trump would like in some places, they're just coming from everywhere, okay? Legally, illegally. Well, he's just trying to stop people coming without documents, so in fairness. So people are coming from all over the world. The people who are coming and who are most educated, who are most likely to have not only college degree but advanced degrees, are coming from Africa. And within Africa, Nigeria is one of the highest. The actual highest is Egypt, by the way. Egyptians are the high. I think it's 65% or 67% of Egyptian adults in the United States have college degrees. But coming from Africa. So it's like, wait, you don't, most people, until you say you were Nigerian, most people in the class assume you were African American probably. Except Nigerians, because they know who you are, right? Dude, and so like, wait, hang on. But that's not happening in his community. Why is his community doing so well? Like, what's going on? What's happening in his community? What's happening for him that, he's liable to do, he's probably going to do quite well here at Penn State and move on and have advanced degrees and make a lot of money. So what's with that? Where's the discrimination if that's happening? You got to go a little deeper in the argumentation.
So, relatively, we are a young, nation. And it's only been a few decades since Jim Crow laws have been sort of extinguished. So if you think about it in that sense, we're getting there compared to other older countries.
Exactly. So what do you need to know? So here's the question. Exactly. Even compared to here. Look, it's not that big of a problem today. So here's the deal. You ready? Think about what the statement is. Think about how you interpreted it. Think about what it is. Not that big of a problem today. What do you mean by that big? What do you think I mean by that? That's the first thing you should say in your minds is, wait, what do you mean that big? Because that big, how you define that big is huge. And so Sean, for example, Sean and I were talking the other day, we had a long conversation, and we were talking about all the people in his organization, Turning Point, and they have views from all over the world, and there are different perspectives, and they're arguing about all this, and his views are just, at some point you're going to talk. Right now you're just on mute, because I just need other people to talk. But dude, this guy is so immensely complex in his views of the world, just like me, right? Like mental illness status. Thinking thoughts from everywhere, drawing from everything. Okay, maybe you're going to get there, bro. Right now you're all right. But you start with that big. And so if he takes the mic and says, yeah, well, I don't really think racism and discrimination against black and brown people is that big of a problem. Many of you would be, oh, boo, whatever, right? But the question, why would you say, you don't know what he means by that big. You just framed it for us. Dude, that big, y'all, do you understand that if we could just go back 50 years, there are basically no black and brown people here in this room. You are not allowed to be in this room. You're not even going to be allowed in many places to get bank accounts, to do all sorts of things, be riding on the back of buses. You're going to be, one thing after another after another. You're not going to get loans. You could never get a loan to go to college. So it's what, that big of a problem? It's well, in the context of so many other things, yeah, it's not really that big of a problem. But how many of us did that? How many of you went right there immediately and thought, well, what do you mean by that big? Because that's the key right here. And did anyone go there? Did anyone start your thinking when I put that up there and say, well, hang on, what do you mean that big of a problem? Because otherwise, what goes on is you meet Sean and, you start talking to him and you start arguing. But he says something, and then you start arguing about, oh, what do you mean it's not that big of a problem? And pretty soon you're arguing one thing over here, right? Like the two of you would be. He's just arguing another point, meaning like, well, I don't know, it's really not that big. But you see like, oh, it's this privileged white guy. So he doesn't get it. Like, he's denying all the things that are happening. The dude might be an absolute scholar on the civil rights movement. He might know more than about inequality in the United States than all of us put together. And he's saying, yeah, it's not that big of a problem. And we don't even bother to even ask, like, dude, what do you mean by that big? Because that says everything. And then we just start going. So, because the truth is, it's really not that big of a problem. If you just look at a little bit of history, oh my God, not compared to, Africans in the U.S., bro, compared to what Africans are experiencing in South Africa, immigrants, compared to immigrants here in the U.S., please, this is like nothing. What's happening on our southern border is nothing compared to what immigrants are experiencing right now in South Africa.